One of the most pathetic things we've seen over the past couple of months is YouTubers freaking out over every little thing when it comes to Nintendo Switch 2. You know, I've seen people complain about the launch lineup, the design of the console, the all sorts of things. The way NSO works, you know, I saw people complaining about like the CRT options and you know, the rewind feature on Nintendo Switch 2 that will not be making the jump over to Nintendo Switch 1. You know, there's all these things that like just really annoy me, you know, like they're just that I've talked a lot about as being a defining example of just how out of touch the typical gaming audience is. You know, I saw someone complain about the packaging. You know, it's been rough. People have been trying to find like some kind of controversy to find about the console, and like they've been going to more and more insane lengths. And it's safe to say that like these are all terminally online weirdos who like make YouTube videos complaining about every little thing Nintendo does. You know, like 6 months ago, these were the guys complaining about like Donkey Kong Country Returns being re-released, right? Like, so you can't take these people seriously, you can't respect them, you can't like listen to them at all, but like we do need to make fun of them because these guys are just completely out of touch with reality. Well, what do I mean by that? Like, look at what's happening with Nintendo Switch 2 coverage right now. You know, look at how these guys are freaking out over the fact the Switch 2 utilizes a day one patch. Right now, you are not able to use a Switch due day one. And right now, people are seething about that. Like, well, why is Nintendo doing this to us? Like, you do realize what happened like last time, right? This has been my thing. What happened on day one? You know, people were getting their hands on Switches early and making online coverage. You know, pretending that they were faulty, that they wouldn't work, that they had all these issues. You know, Crabcat made a video about it. You know, it was an entire YouTube genre. You know, for like a weekend. You know, is just let's pretend that the Switch is just doesn't fucking work. You know, and people ate it up. You know, for a long time, people thought those videos were real. You know, and it wasn't until like later that people began to like move away from it. You know, because people only thought that it was true because of this idea that like, well, they put out so many units and like some of those units were faulty and like again, it was just a gigantic cope. You know, the reality of the situation is that there was no inability of gamers. There was no like serious like faulty Nintendo Switch like manufacturer issue. Like these things, it was all entirely fake, you know, just for clickbait, you know. And YouTubers went all in on it to present the narrative that this console was like going to be a failure or wasn't going to be good, and it caused like a lot of confusion among the community. You know, like this is a legit genre in internet content creation right now. Is pretending that Nintendo consoles are straight up broken and don't work and can't compete with like other pieces of hardware. It's like it's just an entire like delusional community of people who believe this. So Nintendo has decided to take it upon themselves to kind of stop this kind of content from being made. You know, preventing people from updating their consoles on day one was a really clever way of keeping these kind of like clickbaity, opportunistic retards away from like this kind of success. You know, this is very important. I think I would say like this is along the same lines of like you know dealing with the piracy thing. Is that like the online content creator community? It exists almost entirely to downplay Nintendo games. That's just the reality of it. So not being able to cover Nintendo games at all, not being able to like, you know, downplay the hardware or try to like say it's underwhelming or underpowered ahead of time. That's been a big deal. Like I believe Nintendo is also not really I believe they're also being very specific about who what gaming journalism outlets are allowed to handle the get a hold of the Switch 2. Like we're gonna see like quite a lot of like the worst offenders, people like Kotaku and groups like that, like not being able to get a hold of one day one, and because of that, it's going to be harder and harder to like find like those ridiculous clickbaity like narrative reviews that come out every single time Nintendo puts out a product. Like with Mario and Luigi Brothership or Princess Peach Showtime, we saw a lot of people coming out and trying to cry about these games and say that they weren't very good or that like they needed like severe improvements when there was really nothing wrong with them at all. And that's kind of what we're seeing with Brothership, with the Switch 2 right now is that people want to criticize the Switch 2. They want to make this clickbait like Nintendo content. They want to critique it, criticize it. They want to be unreasonable. They want to complain about every little thing, but like they aren't able to get a hold of a console, a functional console, and that's led to them doing insane things like complaining about Switch 2 packaging or like Nintendo Switch Online as a service, right? It was a complete and total cope, essentially. For me personally, I find myself endlessly amused by us seeing these people like try and bend over backwards and try to like find something to complain about when it comes to these games because they really are just like desperate to keep the narrative negative. They're desperate to keep like everything the way it's always been, where people would just buy into whatever they were told about Nintendo hardware by like, the consumer friendly YouTuber, like people don't really think about this is that like running a YouTube channel is a business. And as a result of that, these people have a motive for like deliberately lying about the product just to get clicks and just to get views. And that's been a problem for a very, 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 very long time. But I hope we're in the early stages where people will start to call this out for what it is that these people are not being honest, they're not being genuine. They just want to complain about Nintendo for clicks, for views, for attentions, for subs. Like this is how you become successful online is just relentlessly lying to your audience about whatever it is you're covering, whether it's politics or tech or gaming, like it's all the same. The reality is, YouTubers and gaming journals offer nothing of value to the gaming community whatsoever. And we absolutely have to tell these people to go away.